Hello everyone, and welcome back to Hardcore Strategy on They Bleed Pixels. In this episode, we will be tackling one of the probably most open level in the game. It is still in the underwater stage, and this one also features chains. Mostly just chains and jellyfish. That's pretty much all you're going to be on most of the time. But anyway, let's get started. This quote for this level is brought by China Mievel, someone who I still don't know. Sorry, guy. So, you start off in the jellyfish, and you realize all around you is nothing but open space. Where do you go? Well, I'll tell you what you do, my friend. You drop down. That's pretty much it. And once you get down, you gotta jump. And then once you get on that platform, you gotta jump. And keep jumping until you get into that chain. Now, another thing about this level in particular is that it also illustrates greatly about the major annoyance of the squiddy things. Since there's so much open area, these things can follow you and come out from pretty much nowhere. And of course, sometimes their pathing is made in such a way that you can't just bait them most of the time, but should be pretty easy up until a certain point. This little joint right here, this obstacle, basically the easiest way I found is to dash and then jump. Pretty much, you'll guarantee to get inside that platform, and it is a lot easier than trying to rely upon the floating platforms and going up above, because you pretty much just have to wait for those things to go up. And I think around this part is where at least two of those squiddy things will come and attack you. You can kick them into those spikes as well, but sometimes if you miss, they'll just run away for a while and then come back and get stuck on the obstacle there. So sometimes you gotta get out of the way in order for them to move. But you also want to be careful so that they don't block you and trying to clean onto the walls or anything. These next three obstacles are pretty much the same. You gotta kick the enemy or raise them up to the spikes while trying your best to avoid the squiddy things as much as possible. Sometimes you can't help it, but oh well. Now this part reveals a different side to chains, ones that are just a little bit bigger, but for right now, they're pretty simple, but they will become a lot harder to go around. Now, you can see here they give you the sim just so you can have a checkpoint sooner on. I kind of botched it right here a little bit once I get in, but basically what you normally want to do for this one, for the first chain, you want to go in and get out as quick as you can so that way you can trigger the bomb in to blow up the sloth thing right there. And normally you want to kick those bombs up in the air and then launch them into the next enemy, because it's a pretty easy kill for the most part. You do get a lot of points for it, so it really does help get a checkpoint right up to here, because this, you really do want to save right here, because after this, it's a little bit difficult in climbing up this chain. Now you also want to keep an eye on the saw blades in this little area, and to keep track of where the line ends, because once the line ends, they will start following you at different speeds, so some of them will get to you a little bit quicker, but for the most part, you're pretty much safe once you get past them right there. This is one of the parts that you will hardly die in most of the time. Now, it is a little bit hard, but you can actually save in this spot if you can maneuver around the saw blades there a bit. I always try to save when the saw blade down below is coming towards me. That way I don't have to wait a whole lot of time for it to get there. But luckily, I only had to do this once. And for navigating this little part right here, you just gotta keep an eye on where they're heading, and to just stay in one lane as much as possible until a saw blade is heading in your direction. I always dash down this way because there's a good chance you can launch that enemy into the saw blade right there. Gives you a good amount of points. And of course, there's the little squiddy thing, and since it is close quarters, they're a lot easier to kill. Now, of course, for the remainder of these two enemies, the monster down there, you just want to kick him. He'll pretty much go anywhere, and for this guy, I actually find it easier sometimes to just lock myself into place and stab him from there. Now, once you kill off the remaining enemies in this area, you want to make sure you have enough for a checkpoint, because this, I believe, is one of the hardest parts of this level. It's not the one after this, it's this part. Mostly because you have to time your jumps very specifically. Like, you pretty much have to jump as soon as you fall off of the hanging ledge there. And also, you gotta time it right so you don't hit the saw blades, because if you go in a weird way, then you might end up launching in somewhere where you won't have enough time to go to. Now, of course, you can always clean on to the other side of the wall right there, and so you can just wait for it to go. But it's really mostly just about timing. Because sometimes if you do too early, you'll bump your head up against the wall you just passed and fall into spikes. So you're gonna want to go up into those walls as best as you can. I am going to skip up here a little bit though, because I do happen to mess around a few times. Now once you get past this part, there's a very tedious obstacle that suddenly gets your attention. The game has also made itself so you don't actually know about this officially until you get there. Because basically, instinctively, if you hit a switch right next to the door, it'll open. But instead, this one launches you down to a platform down below. Because what you have to do, actually, in order to open that gate, you have to go all the way through the line of pikes sticking out of the ground there. And basically, the easiest way you do this is just by sliding down over them. Of course, you do want to make sure you can kill off as many enemies as you can, because you will want to have a checkpoint once you get through that door. Now, of course, since these chains are all linked roughly the same, you gotta dash a certain way pretty much every time. You want to make it too easy enough. And of course, if you go above them for any moment at all, you will die. And you want to keep an eye out for these bomb imps as well. You don't want to be in the wrong position when these things go off, because otherwise you can find yourself getting impaled real quick. And for the rest of the points to get a checkpoint, you basically just gotta impale all the remaining enemies. That's pretty much it. Just dash out from there and make sure you can land in the right spot. But you always want to make sure you can dash out from this particular spot, because any sooner you might end up impaling yourself in spikes. Now this part right here, you have to follow a specifically speeded line of saw blades in order to get through. They do not go at the same speed that you'll move, so you have to tap the button in order to be able to get through the right way, because otherwise you'll find yourself getting juggled back and forth. And of course, you want to make sure you go in through at a certain time, otherwise you'll find yourself getting caught by one once you get enough room out. So you gotta make sure you have enough room in places. And of course, back there you can see the saw blades going up there. That basically keeps you from getting a checkpoint in that area. Now, as you can see, I did the wrong move there, so I will go ahead and speed the cells back up to get back in that place. And you basically want to duck, so that guy will knock the bomb imp down, so you can get a whole bunch of points from blowing up all those enemies. Because it's a lot easier and a lot more score-based if you just drop one down. And you do want to get a checkpoint past the saw blades, because otherwise that'll be just one more thing to take care of when you get up there. You do want to save at least as soon as you can. It doesn't matter about the knife imps. Usually you want to save after you kill off enemies in the area. But I just went a little bit more skillful in this particular area than I probably should have. Now this part can be a little bit tricky to maneuver, mostly due to the squiddy things that spawn in the area. But since every area is the same, you basically want to go through it the same way. That does not get you taking damage. You can see there's like a little bit of a different way you can kill those things. You do get more points for killing them in the air if you can do that. But usually you want to kill off the squiddy things as quickly as possible, because they can get down to a certain level or a certain angle that'll make it hard for you to kill them without taking a lot of hits or even dying. I do take a few deaths around this part, but for the most part, what you want to do is you want to get on a certain ledge, and then you want to wait for it to get past it, then duck, so you can later dash into it, and then air jump all the way back. It's a little bit difficult with timing, but it should be pretty straightforward most of the time. Again, this is probably going to be one of the few places where you get stuck on for a good amount of time. At least it was for my first time around it, as you can see a few times around for here as well. But as long as you follow that pattern for each ring, you should be okay to go. You do not do what I just did though. You want to go off that ledge and go right around into the safe area down there. You usually don't want to go through between the spikes there. Now, I've found an interesting way of gaining points off these guys by launching the spikes up there. You can kick them up onto the platform, but it does take a little bit more time. And of course, as you can see, those squiddy things, even if there is a obstacle in front of them that can kill them, they will pretty much run into you no matter what. So you always want to make sure you're going to be in the right place. Now these platforms, all these platforms, they only show, I think, a very small amount of themselves. Now, I remember when I played, there is a particular spot you could go to that would allow you to save on the saw blade spinner up above. Since it is stationary, you could save there, but it takes a little bit of timing, and I will show it once I get enough points here. Now, the reason why I want you to save up in this little area here as close as you can to the top is because this part is aggressively harder when you have saw blades going in a different direction and speed from the platforms you're running on. Because not only do you have to time your jumps into when you land on platforms, so you also have to look out for any saw blades that would be coming around, because as you saw, they can launch you in pretty much any direction they will please, so you usually want to have a checkpoint very close to the top, because otherwise you'll find yourself having a hard time getting there. Of course, it is pretty short, it does make it a lot easier. Now, you do also want to make sure you have enough points to make a checkpoint in this area, because it is also the last time you get to make a checkpoint before you win. Because this part right here, this is basically what you would call a gauntlet. It is a single obstacle that you have to go through, that you cannot save in, that you have to keep moving in, or stay on a single platform, like it's shown there. Another thing you have to look out for is that the faster up the platforms go when you stand on them, the higher up your base jump will be. You always want to make sure that you're always going to not hit anything up above. I am skipping along here because this part actually does take a little bit longer comparatively to most of the times if you do not know the right sequence. So this part right here is probably the hardest, mostly because you have to know how to dodge these things. Basically, you want to wait for those things to get up to speed to you, and then once they launch on you, you will jump. You want to make sure that they will not attack you when you're in the air, because otherwise they can attack you when you jump back into the air, or later. Now this part, of course, is a little bit easier. You just gotta keep up with the pace of those bomb ends falling, and you also are racing the platform. And that is pretty much the end of this chapter. I hope you have all learned a good enough lesson. I know I have. But this one is going to be a little bit longer because this level is a little bit harder to do. This is actually one of the harder levels to do as speedrunning, just because of how much there is to go through and how many obstacles. But if you are patient enough, you will make it through. So I'll see you all in the next episode when we take on the final chapter of this stream. Goodbye.